Welcome to this episode of Fear Less, Do More. Today I have with me Kim McGuinness, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner, but she's also a woman in politics. When you meet a public character like Kim, it's very easy just to focus on her public image. So today I'm really keen to explore with Kim a little bit more about her as a person, what drives her, what gets her out of bed every day, and she's got a really interesting story too. Hi Kim, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. We're going to just dive straight in. You're somebody who has had lots of different interests and careers over the years. Yeah. Tell us about how you started off in your early days.
Well, I'm working class. I'm from the region. I'm from the West End of Newcastle, and I grew up in a traditional working class household, a council house. My dad was a scaffolder. He worked on the shipyards and in various other industries, Blythe Power Station. My mum worked part-time doing various different jobs that you could get at the time. And we sort of, it was a really, really difficult time in terms of what we had. But I had this amazing childhood where, despite all of that, and despite the fact that we didn't have very much, and as I got older, I came to understand that, I did feel really encouraged to just get on and do whatever I wanted. And so, I was the first in my family to go to university, really, really encouraged by parents who just really wanted to make sure that we succeeded. I did history. I stayed in Newcastle. And then when I graduated, I just didn't have a clue what to do. But I did know that I didn't really at that point want to move away. So I went into banking, which was just, even now I think about it. And it was brilliant. I worked at HSBC. They were fantastic. It was a lovely place to work, but it totally wasn't for me. And then I went into recruitment. And actually, despite the fact that that's quite cutthroat and it's quite a difficult industry to work in, I found an awful lot I liked in that. The ability to support people and help people to find their chosen path. But I wanted to do that in a more, I suppose, charitable way. So at that point, I think I found my feet, and I went into students' unions, doing that kind of thing. And I then stayed with charities, students and young people, and people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And that took me on a much more distinct career journey where, before I was elected to be Police and Crime Commissioner, I was working for Walking with the Wounded. So with veterans who, experience issues on that transition from the military, with employment, with housing, with basically all of the things that I talk about day to day now. So
you mentioned there you were elected for Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yeah.
So it's not a job that you just apply for and go for an interview, having that sort of normal route. How do you become Police and Crime Commissioner?
So I'm completely an accidental politician, right? And people go, tell me about your political journey. I'm like, God, I'm not sure if I've really got one as such, but I've always been very politically aware, and I joined the Labour Party pretty young. The upbringing I had, it was a very natural thing to be, a Labour Party member, although my parents weren't. We talked about politics in a much more real life way. And so that part of me always existed as I went through that career journey. But it was when I moved back to the Northeast in 2013, having been away for about 5 years, and I'd just been desperate to come back. And I'd started to knock on a few doors with my local MP because, I really felt that in 2013, as we moved towards the 2015 general election, we needed a change in government back then. Gosh, and that feels like a long time ago. And Catherine, the MP, said to me, you should stand for the council. And obviously you're a councillor alongside your day job. And I just said, I'm too young. I don't know enough to do it. I'm not experienced enough. And she sort of said, no, look, this is supposed to be for normal people. And we need more women doing it. And I said, no, not for me. And then she came back and she said, we really do need more younger people, more women, more people with life experience, with a career to do this. And I just said, well, maybe it's in the future, but I'm not ready yet. And then she came back and said, look, we really need you to stand because we just don't have enough women and the election is coming up and we haven't got enough people. And that's how I started to be in elected politics. So I didn't win that one. The following year, I stood in a ward that was closer to home for me, the neighbouring ward to the one I grew up in. And at that point, I'd got the bug. I'd been out door knocking, talking to people, understanding the difference that you could make for them. And I got elected. And what I found was that I was getting more and more and more involved in the council, and I'd reduced my hours at work, and I'd started to kind of take a step back there. And then I got appointed to the cabinet for the city to do culture, sport and public health. And at that point, I started to work on kind of public health approaches to improving people's lives and preventing crime, on the premise that happy, healthy people tend not to commit crime. There's always exceptions. But in general, if you kind of understand the causes, you can prevent it. So when Vera, the Police and Crime Commissioner, Vera Baird, who was the first Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria, went off to be National Victims Commissioner, I sort of went through a similar process where people said, well, you should have a little look at this. The stuff that you're doing directly translate. No, I can't do that. I'm not ready to be, full-time in politics. And then, 6 weeks later, I was, which makes it sound easy, and it wasn't. It is hard to stand for election and to put your head above the parapet, but it's also the best decision that I've ever made. And it's a massive privilege to do it.
So what do you actually do as Police and Crime Commissioner?
So I think, if you go and Google a Police and Crime Commissioner, the .gov website will tell you that I'm here to oversee the police, to hold them to account. Really important to make sure that the police are acting on behalf of the public. If there's issues, those issues are tackled head on and corrected, to manage the budget, to raise the precept, which people will know about, and that's a really difficult series of decisions, particularly in a time where we have less, and to set the direction for the force. But what that actually means is I represent the public of the region on everything: policing, crime, community safety, kind of all the way from the borders right down to County Durham and across to Cumbria. And I reflect those views to both the force and to government to speak out on those issues on behalf of people. Engage with people day to day, go on visits, spend time with the public, understand what their priorities are, and make sure that the way that the force is conducting themselves reflects the priorities of the public, so that they're best able to kind of keep people safe and provide a service, fight crime and prevent crime, which is what we say that they need to be doing. And then, of course, I am a commissioner, so it sounds like a grand title, but I commission services. So I commission all of the victim services for the region, loads of prevention services, because that's kind of been our main priority, particularly around violence prevention and campaigns on knife crime and serious violence, as well as violence against women and girls, and making our region safer for everyone. So I actually commission services as well. There's loads, it's really varied, and you can really take a role like this and make a real difference to people.
So you sound like you've got like an amazing job, which is obviously really personally fulfilling, but challenging, all of those things that you would want as part of a job. So why have you decided now to stand as the Labour's mayoral candidate?
Well, I love the region. I just think this is the best place in the world, right? I really do. And I think one of the most special things about the place is I know that loads of the people watching this or listening to this who are from the region will completely agree with me. We're so proud of it. But it's had its challenges, and we have been held back, and we have been underfunded, and we haven't had that voice that gets out there on the national and the international stage and says, this is who we are, there's more to the north than Manchester and Leeds. And I think that that's what we need. And I'm committed to making sure that that's what we get. I think we can turn this brilliant place into something even more special. And in the process, tackle some of kind of our biggest challenges. We've got the highest levels of child poverty anywhere in the country. We need to measure our success by how we tackle that, by how many kids we lift out of poverty. We really need to make sure that everyone growing up here has the best possible opportunities, and that we grasp the things that we can be known for with both hands, so green jobs, green homes, culture, sport, music, with both hands, and say, actually, they're going to be the drivers for growth in this region because they're ours, and I'm really passionate about that. And I do think that if we get it right, we will also continue to make the region safer.
And devolution, obviously, is a big game changer for the region, but it's also going to be a big challenge. If you are elected and you are the one that has to pull it all together, how are you going to do that when you've got 7 different local authorities, all different colours, and also the rest of the region who are already devolved. How are you going to pull all of that together so we get the best stuff for the Northeast?
Well, I think over the last couple of years, the leaders of those councils those councils have gone on a huge journey, and they've done an absolutely brilliant job throughout COVID. There's not very many good things that came out of COVID, but the fact that the region galvanised, that we all got round the table together and said, right, how do we make this horrendous experience, as supportive as possible? Or how can we be as supportive as possible in this horrendous circumstances for the people that live in the region? And everyone's heads were together and everyone was singing from the same hymn sheet. And that's carried on as we move towards devolution. And as Police and Crime Commissioner, I've worked with 6 out of the 7 of them really comfortably, so that we've been able to achieve some really great things in reduction in crime and antisocial behaviour, the prioritisation of violence against women and girls, making our streets safer for everyone. And I'm confident that we can continue that, because actually, there's hard and fast powers around things like public transport and brownfield land and skills. But the biggest thing that you've got at your disposal is the power to convene, to get people round a table and say, right, how are we going to do this together? How do we take Brand Northeast and get it out there? How do we grasp these opportunities? And, I have experience of working with those people, and I'm confident that together with them and, a really willing, vibrant business community, and most importantly, the public who actually this is really about day to day, whose lives need to be improved by this. I know that we're very willing to have our own voice and to control more of our own future together. So I think it's a really, really exciting time. It is going to be challenging, and we're not going to get everything that we want straight away, but we've got to get much better at making sure that we're heard.
And do you think devolution in its current form goes far enough?
No.
So where would you like it to get to?
I think, the part of the reason that I'm doing this is because I really believe that the best people to make decisions about an area are the people that live here, that spend their days here. And I don't mean me. I don't mean that you should have this all-powerful mayor. You've got a mayor. That mayor now makes all of those decisions. That's ludicrous. I mean communities. I mean getting out there, and the way that I have as Police and Crime Commissioner and talking to the public and saying, if we're going to reimagine your high street, like, what should it look like? What is it that you need? Because very clearly, kind of the traditional retail offer doesn't necessarily work anymore. But also the government's way of doing things, which is throwing £1 million at a high street and replacing a few shutters and putting some new benches in, also doesn't work. So we need to ask people what it is that they want. So I would like much more, I suppose, free-flowing devolution, where we take away the constant bidding for competitive cash. I don't want to be competing against Manchester, Leeds and Sheffield. I want to be forming a Northeast that stands on its own 2 feet, so more freedom around the way that we spend the money, particularly so we can make difference, that not just in the economy, but also in kind of our social progress, helping people to have better access to public services. I think we need to be looking at having control over post-16 skills rather than just post-19 skills, bringing devolution of the job centre, because then we can really help people with the barriers to entry to work. I think we need to start looking at devolving things like the Arts Council and Homes England, so we can have more control over how we spend those once competitive pots of cash in order to really support the growth in our region according to the people that live here, not the people in Westminster.
Just popping in to say, if you are enjoying the conversation so far and want to make sure you keep up to date with other episodes, then please hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. Let's jump back into the conversation now. So you've obviously been out and about talking to a lot of people, either in your capacity as PCC or as part of your campaign. What are the sort of surprising things that you've been told when you've been out and about that you thought, God, I never thought that would be an issue, or I never thought that would be something that would be top of people's minds?
Do you know, it's interesting, because I don't think that there's much that surprises me, because ultimately we all live here and we all experience the same things day to day. We all know that the public transport system doesn't work the way that it should, that it's too complex. We all know that it's really hard to find the right thing if you want to change careers or or improve your skills. We all know that these things are a bit too difficult to access. But what always gets me about getting out and speaking to people, whether it's kind of through door knocking or whether it's public meetings, is that people have brilliant ideas. I don't like a kind of politics where politicians sit in a room and talk to each other and then go forth and tell everybody what it is that they know and what people want. You've got to listen. And some of the best things that we've done, particularly around women's safety, for example, have come of ideas from the public. So, for example, we put help points in parks in areas where women didn't feel safe walking through, so that, you know, they knew that they were being watched by CCTV, that it was well lit, that there was a button they could press to say, look, I need help and I need it now. We have put police officers in the nighttime economy in plain clothes to make interventions with people who are frankly committing either sexual violence or sexual harassment, and making that intervention early. These are ideas that come from those conversations with the public. And sometimes the best ideas are those ones. They're not the ones that we as people who are immersed in it day to day come up with. And that's what's really important to me.
That really resonates with me, because I'm a massive passionate advocate of creating diversity in decision making in business, because I always say to people, I don't have all the answers. And certainly, you know, if you have the six of us that own our business, if we sit around the table, we all have a certain perspective. We're not going to come up with the most creative stuff. You need to find ways of engaging. And exactly the same as you do, going out and talking to the people that you're representing. You know, it's really important, I think, for business people and business leaders to talk to the people in their business.
Completely. And I just, I mean, and in many respects, it's exactly the same. I spend a lot of time with police officers, you know, just out and about doing kind of walkabouts on estates, and I learn about the place, but I also learn about what they're going through day to day. And I think that's really crucial, because, as you say, quite often if you say, you know, tell me your views, it can be quite self-selecting. And obviously by our very nature, we're self-selecting. And so getting out and saying to people kind of in their own environment, in their day to day, what is it that's bothering you in this moment? How would you solve it? Let me help you to do that. People appreciate it. And also it really is I think it's a driver for real change. I don't know how we got to a point where it feels like it's almost a brave thing in politics to say, I don't have all the answers. I need to go out there and ask people what they think. But for some reason it has. It shouldn't be controversial, should it?
No, it shouldn't.
We shouldn't be seeking people who think they know all the answers, because they just don't. And maybe that's where the image of dishonesty comes from.
So you've talked a couple of things that you've touched on there. You talked about putting your head above the parapet, and you talked about your passion for violence against women and children, and creating safe spaces for women. As a woman in politics, you are putting your head above the parapet.
Yeah.
And I think no matter what, whatever your colour is in politics, putting your head above the parapet, you are going to be shot down by some people at some point in time. And some of that, increasingly because of social media, is becoming pretty horrible. And we've had some horrendous cases, you know, of politicians being actually murdered.
Yeah.
And again, on both sides of the fence, not just from one particular party. How do you feel about that? Putting your head above the parapet?
It's funny, I think in some respects you detach yourself from... So I feel really passionately that it shouldn't be like that. And I want to continue to fight for a world where that just isn't the case, where we can all go about our business in complete safety, because that's just a right, isn't it? That we should be able to do our jobs in complete safety. But the truth is that isn't where we are now. At times, particularly on social media, the abuse can be pretty acute. It's overtly misogynistic. It can be nasty. There have been times when it's become threatening and crossed the line so that it's criminal or dangerous. And that is, it's quite, you know, if you allow yourself to think about it too much, it really does affect your mental health. It affects the way that you behave. And so I try really hard to just think, you know, actually the vast majority of people that I will always deal with are well-meaning. Sometimes people don't choose the way that they express themselves as carefully as perhaps they should. But there are also a lot of people who should know better. And so we should be telling these stories and saying, you know, this is not a way that we should behave towards people. But I do think it puts women off. And in a way, I try really hard to never say no to speaking in groups of women and girls, particularly about things like career journeys and, you know, getting into politics. And there was probably going back 5 years when I saw someone who was interested, I'd say, no, you should absolutely do it. You should just do it. You know, in the way that kind of that's how I was enticed in. Quite often women have to be asked, invited, told, you know, gently nudged in the right direction. And, you know, I felt like it was part of my job to do that. And I've changed the way that I approach that so that I do still encourage and I want women to do it. And I will push them in the right direction and encourage them. But I'll also be really honest about the cost of it and the fact that, you know, you do become public and people will criticise you, and that criticism can turn into harassment and abuse, because it is unfortunate, the reality. But I think it's incumbent on everybody, and particularly men, dare I say it, to make it so that the next generation of women in politics and business and journalism, in leadership in general, in sport, in music, whatever it may be, are not exposed to this, because it feels to me now like it's harder than ever to convince women to do this. And it shouldn't be, because particularly if you're starting to look at something like devolution, I'm so passionate about this and about the region. Women's voices are crucial. If we want to make this place safer for women, it's crucial. If we want an inclusive economy that puts women at the centre and kind of closes the gender pay gap and closes that gap that stops women from achieving their potential because of barriers like childcare, then we need women's voices. If we want to transition more people onto public transport away from their cars, we need to make it safer. We need women's voices. And at the moment, there is one woman who's a mayor and 2 called Andy, and there's 10 in the country, and that's where we are.
Yeah, and I think it's a big challenge across all sorts of different forums. You know, whether you're in, like you say, whether you're in business, whether you're in music, whether you're in sport, whatever. It has, because we've had so many years of things being male dominated. It takes a long time to change, and I think when you've got something like safety there as an additional issue, it makes it more difficult. So, what one thing would you change that would make it, that you know would make a difference to women coming into politics?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because, I mean, what I want to say is I would just cancel misogyny. Just cancel it. Some of that is out of our control, isn't it? You know, we've got to take on the social media companies. They've got to be better at this. We need better laws protecting women from abuse and harassment, frankly. But there are too many people who still think it's okay to say something to a woman that they wouldn't dream in a million years of saying to a man. Some of that's out of our control. It's generational. It's about education. We've got to keep pushing to change it. But some of the structural stuff's completely in our control. And so I know that there are millions of women who either are economically inactive or who are not achieving what they want to in the labour market because they just can't get adequate childcare. We can change that. That will definitely be reflected in, you know, a cadre of senior women in business, in politics, in everything. And we can change that. We can say, no, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to train more childcare workers. We're going to train more social care staff, because it's not just childcare, it's social care as well. And we're going to make it more affordable and at the same time make those professions more appealing. That is in our control. And I think that that's something that we've got to take as an opportunity in this region and lead, but actually it's got to be a national priority if we want to change access to, you know, good careers for women. So I think you have to think, well, how do I control the controllables, and then how can I be part of the campaign for change? And actually at times, I don't know about you, but I felt uncomfortable talking about it. You know, I don't want it to become the story. I don't want it to become, you know, every time someone writes about Kim McGuinness, they write about the abuse she gets online. Because that's not...
You don't want it to define you. Yeah.
Exactly. But there is also a responsibility to say, look, this is completely unacceptable. This does stop women from doing what they should be doing, which is leading. And we're going to have to change it, and calling it out is part of that.
But you need the allyship. You need the men alongside you saying this is unacceptable for this to happen to my female colleagues. To affect real change. Women can't change. We can't change what the patriarchy's done.
No, it's so true.
On their own.
And quite often we file these things neatly, don't we, under issues affecting women.
Yeah.
And then we go forth into rooms full of women and we talk about them when actually we need to talk about them in rooms full of everybody to make the change, and particularly men and particularly children, actually.
Yeah. But I think representation is really important, and role models have always been very important to me. Who have been the people that have inspired you in your journey?
Oh gosh, I'm going to be super cliched and I'm going to say my mum, because it is true. She is absolutely. She's just she's stoic. She's hardworking. She has this positive attitude that just transcends everything else. Actually, sometimes to the point where it's a little bit annoying. I'll phone her on a rant and she'll just say, well, it'll be okay because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that just now. But it is kind of the person that everybody needs in their life. And I get it from my mum. But I have had some really incredible female mentors as I've gone through my career. And they tend to be women who are just doing a great job. It's really easy to look into politics and go, I'm really inspired by Jacinda Ardern, I'm really inspired by Hillary Clinton. I am. But it is the women that have pushed other women forward, and I've really felt the benefit from. So people like Catherine McKinnell, who was the woman who said to me, you should stand. People like Pat Ritchie, who used to be the chief executive of Newcastle Council, seeing her in quite a male-dominated environment, you really just go for it and take it on with two hands and just grasp it and say, no, we're driving it forward. Brilliant women councillors who have changed the nature of the estates and the neighbourhoods that they represent and really improved things for people. I think you find mentors and inspiration much more readily in your day-to-day if you allow yourself, rather than kind of looking to these starry figures to inspire you. And
obviously at the moment you're very busy on the campaign trail, but if you did have some spare time to do things that make you personally happy, what would they be?
So I want to be that person, right? And I'm sure you get a little bit of this as well, because I know how busy you are, where you want to espouse the virtues of work-life balance and looking after yourself. I will readily admit at the minute I am not doing that. It's a really exciting, really, really busy time. But I try and make time to walk my dogs on the beach, and the beach matters. It makes me feel really calm. The day after I won my first council election, I went to the beach and found a bit of space. The day after I won my police and crime commissioner election, it was, it had been really hard work. I went to the beach again on my own with the dog to decompress. It's something that I really enjoy. And then the other thing is basically any live music, theatre, anything like that, if it's on, I want to see it. And so I really try and do that. And I actually, that kind of helps with the passion for the region as well, because I think there's so much of that going on here, and it is really fantastic if you can get out and experience it. So those are the things that I love to do, and I look forward to one day being able to do more of them.
So what's the best gig you've ever been to?
Oh my word. Do you know, right, I've been to some really big gigs, so, Foo Fighters and Kings of Leon and all of that. I went to see now the Glass House. Maybe it was the stage then. I can't remember when the change happened. Self-Esteem. I went to see Self-Esteem. I think it's Rebecca Lucy Taylor as her name. But she did a prom, sort of an unplugged, and it was so powerful, so feminist, so moving. I just walked away feeling like so positive, and it was 10 o'clock at night. I wanted to go knock on doors and be like, we need to make change. So she was absolutely, absolutely brilliant. There's so many. I'm lucky.
If you Google...
Sam Fender at St. James's Park was pretty special. And it's a bit cliche, but if you were there, it's that thing where kind of everybody was just watching this lad from the region who had got everything that he hoped for, who'd started, with a pretty humble beginnings, achieve everything. And again, it was that demonstration of like how proud we are, because I think everyone was really enjoying themselves and they loved the music and they kind of loved the visceral northeastness of it all. But they also were just dead proud of him. Yeah. And I loved that.
And your dogs, what sort of dog? Dog or dogs?
I've got two. I've got a Labrador called Errol, who's 6, and a Spaniel called Iris, who's 3. I do talk about them as though they are my children, but I do, I love them, and they're dead grounding. Regardless of what's going on in your life and how mad things are, and how many miles you've driven this week, or how knackered you are, they need to go for a walk, and they need to get exercise, and they need your attention, and I love that.
And they're always pleased to see you.
And they're always pleased to see you. Always pleased to see you. And actually, it's probably the best quality time I spend with my husband is when we're out with the two of them on the beach. And we try every Sunday, rain or shine, to get it in. My Instagram is basically just covered in dog pictures and beach pictures. But it does like clear your head.
It does.
And yeah, your dogs are, as I said, they treat everyone the same, but they treat you just a little bit better.
Anyway, the podcast is called Fear Less, Do More. You must have had some times, I mean, obviously you've taken lots of risks. You stood, and you said you were unsuccessful the first time you stood. Going back into that after taking a knock, you must have had some apprehension about that. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you just thought, oh well, tried once, going to do it again.
I
How do you manage that sort of fear and keep being brave and doing big things?
Try really hard not to think about it.
Sorry, I've just reminded you.
No, it's so true. Well, I mean, it's no secret. I am taking a huge risk. I am walking out of something that I know I'm not standing again as police and crime commissioner, which has just been the biggest privilege. I'd love to be able to continue to do it, but I'm taking a big risk. But I also think that I prefer the risk than the regret. And I think that's the thing that drives me to keep going and to really put everything into it. I don't have a plan B. I don't have a backup plan. People ask you that all the time. They say, well, what will you do if you don't win? It's like, well, first of all, let's not talk about not winning. But I don't have a backup plan because I do think that if you're going to do something like this, you have to give it everything. And I've given the role I'm in now everything, and I will do until the very last moment, but I've got to give it everything. And what I don't want to do is wake up in 5 years and think, I should have done it, why didn't I do it? And so I suppose the way that I deal with the risk and the fear, and there is plenty of fear, is I prioritise that over the regret.
That's a really positive way of looking at it.
Yeah, yeah.
And what would you like to do more of?
Oh, what would I like to do more of? It would be very tempting for me to give you the pitch and say, I'd like to do more of bringing people together to solve the region's problems. I would, and that's the ultimate aim. Is I want to get over that line, get elected, and get started in this job so that we can really bring the region together and start what I think is our next chapter. But I think you mean personally, don't you? I would like to read more books. I would like to go back to learning a bit more. And I would like to probably spend more time with my friends and family. But I also know that I have a real responsibility, and that's a choice I've made. And I'm very, very lucky that I'm surrounded by incredibly supportive family and friends who know that kind of at the moment, the time that I have available has to be dedicated to doing this, to really promoting the region, to talking about it, to getting out there. And that's a passion. And actually, as I said at the beginning, I see it reflected in them as well. They love it. They're excited. They want us to succeed as a place. They want the kids that grew up the way that we grew up to have fantastic opportunities and to have equal opportunities, which is really, really important. So I'd love to do more of those things, but I'm realistic about how much of it I'll be able to do.
Well, thanks ever so much for talking to me today. It's been a pleasure to hear about your story a bit more, hear about the things that inspire you. And I'm sure that the amount of passion that you've got will just mean that you're going to go on to great things, whatever that might be.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode of our podcast, Fear Less, Do More. If you did, then please follow or subscribe. If you enjoyed what we talked about in this episode, then you might enjoy this one here, which is also linked in the show notes. Thanks for listening.